this park subcommittee taking another look, and that was very helpful for me for collecting a lot of information. So Swan Place clearly has been a special parking case in Arlington for a period of time. And as far as I can tell, it dates back to 1957 when it was converted from a private way to a public road. And there was some agreement made during that conversion that gave special privileges to some of those, to the people on Swan Place. And the way that I based that off is Mr. Balin was kind enough to pass along some information. And so we've got this note from 1970 from Mrs. Ox, who lived on the road, and it was acknowledged in reply from the Board of Selectmen, acknowledging that there was a special condition that existed on that road. It seems to me that if they wanted to make that a truly permanent special condition, they should, and would have put it in the deed. Because at the time, when you're changing that road, you're changing the deed. And if they wanted to make special rights for parking, they had the ability at that time to formalize it, and they chose not to. Does that logically hang together, Ms. Rice? That if when they, I guess what I'm just asking is, when they converted the road from private to public, they would have been touching the deeds, and if they'd wanted to make something permanent attached to that, like parking, they could have done it at that time.
There are a number of ways it could have been made more permanent than the sort of informal nature that we see.
Yeah, so it appears to me to have been an informal agreement, and it lasted for 55 years. In fact, it lasted, in 1994, or 95, excuse me, there was another experiment made where they made it a resident-only period, and they said 180-day trial period. Of course, more than 180 days have elapsed, but those signs stayed up there. So for me, this whole question about whether or not, to me, is Swan Place has been special parking. Should it continue to be special parking? Mm-hmm. And I guess I feel like nothing lasts forever. The town has changed, our parking needs have changed, our policies have changed, so on and so forth. And I don't feel bound by that decision 55 years ago. And at that point, I'm ready to go with this change. So I wanted to express to people why my logic, why I'm supporting this motion.
Right. How many cars were there in 1957 or 1970 on that street versus today? How many residences were divided up into apartment units and stuff? Anyhow, conditions have changed, and I guess shame on us. However, because of a letter from one of the residents, we have looked into it. So anyhow, obviously there are residents here. Anybody wishing to speak? We're only talking about the daytime permitting now. Would anybody like to speak on that issue? Okay. Yep. Yes. No, I recognize the woman in the back first.
Yeah,
Name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Beth Pavoni from 14 Swan Place, and I always park on the street because there's not enough room for me to park at the driveway. So if I choose to take the bus to work, and that's my main concern, I don't have the option because there is a driveway at the house that I don't park in. I'm not going to be able to apply for a daytime permit, and if I park in front of the house, then I will get a ticket because I'll be gone for 8 hours or more.
So may I ask, are the cars in the driveway also there all day long, or do any of them leave?
One of them, 2 of them are there all day long.
And how many spaces are there in the driveway?
There are 3.
So could you pull in the driveway on the day you're taking the bus?
Some days, but not all days. The way it is, my sister who lives in the apartment as well as the night shift.
Right.
So it doesn't always work.
Okay.
And one of the spots isn't really a driveway, so it's not always conducive.
Yeah.
I would say, if I could on that, I sort of have experience with what you have. I have 4 cars, and I have a very narrow sloped driveway, and one of the cars, my parents are handicapped. They always have to be at the top because it's a very steep decline slope, and they're up there in their age and don't want them walking up the hill, falling up the hill. So what we do, you're sort of in my situation, we sort of have double key shuffle, that I'm the first one out, but I'm the third one parked in. And that's one of the things I have to do in the morning, is move all the cars out and then put all the cars back in. So that would be a good way, like if you all could have a copy of each other's keys or a basket that they're in, you know, and it basically, it's just the first one who needs to get out, that's the one who does the driveway shuffle, gets everyone out and puts it back in.
And most of the time, the 2 hours should be fine for the ones pulled out on the street. Mr. Dunn?
Yeah. So I know that the proposal that we're talking about is making the parking situation harder for the people on Swan Place. And if you look at our agenda, you'll see that we are talking about parking, like every week. And the thing is, it's it's a popular town, and it's a crowded town, and it doesn't have sufficient parking. And so the on-street parking is it's a common resource that we have to carefully, not give preference to one set or another. And so we get people who stand at that microphone and they talk about, like they live in Arlington Center, they live in one of the apartment buildings, they don't have any parking. And it kills me because I wish I could say, here's the solution that I'm going to give to you, here's your parking space, but I don't. And so, but I can help you with things like finding places where we can rent, because there are plenty of places who rent parking spaces, including the town and also private. We try to work to try to find people, parking buddies and stuff like that. We work really hard to make the most out of the parking spaces that we have available, and that is frankly why I'm in favor of this change. And I'm very aware that it makes some people's lives harder.
It makes a lot of people's lives hard.
Can you talk to the landlord about a reconfiguration?
He's tried. He's tried. And, I just think if there could be some way where there could be 2-hour parking plus residents, so that, on the days when I am at work and I do take my car and I'm not there still can be 2-hour parking, but for the residents, it could be full-time parking. I just think that's an easy and logical
See, that would trickle all throughout town. Everybody would
We
say,
did that all
I want to
last
park.
time.
You know what I mean? It's really difficult. We have to treat everybody, set up
I
a
understand
protocol.
that, and-
I mean, you heard the residents before you on Forest Street, the exact same thing. And our job is to, work and try to find, usually it's a compromise. Usually nobody gets 100% of what they want, and that stinks. Leaf blowers, but the board tries to do its best, and one of the things, I think town council or the chairman, previous town council told me, or the chairman can correct me, one of the things that was sort of instilled upon me when I became a selectman, unless there was a legal rare reason, but I was always told I could never bind the hands of a future board of selectmen. Any vote I take 10, 20 years down the road, my colleague sitting here is not bound by that. So that's, sort of also the framework to what Mr. Dunn was saying. I think that's one of the first things I was told.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mark, did you want to, Mark Capelli, want to speak on this?
I think Jim, Mr.
Please, yep.
Balin?
Good evening. My name is Jim Balin from 30 Swan Place. I do live in one of the 3 houses that was mentioned, so my concerns are probably different than many of the people here today. I just want to address a couple of quick things. I have more to say about overnight, but I'll go back and sit down for that. For the daytime parking, a couple issues. Mr. Dunn, I appreciate your careful consideration of this issue, and I understand and appreciate your reasoning. I'm not personally convinced that anyone in 1957 really would have thought that they needed to put a deed restriction to make this binding. I think it was an agreement. The people agreed to turn it from a private to a public on this agreement. We have documentation that there was an agreement. It wasn't put in a deed. That's unfortunate for us. But in my mind, I think there is still a commitment. I totally agree. You have the authority to change parking rules whenever you want. I just think when a commitment was made, and there's a very unique parking situation on Swan Place, that the board should really carefully consider that commitment before throwing away the 55 years plus history we have. Let me just mention a couple other quick things, because I am one of those 3 mentioned. Ms. Mahone, you didn't mention guest permits, which is the reason I actually wrote the letter back in May. I don't have the ability to have a guest park legally on my street. Now, I guess if there's 2-hour parking, they'll be allowed to stay for 2 hours, but if I have a contractor come over, if I have other guests during the day, essentially I have no way to have them stay for more than 2 hours. So I guess one request I would make is whether you would consider allowing for a guest permit for any property that is eligible for a daytime permit. My second comment is to Officer Rateau. Number 34 Swan Place is an illegal driveway. It actually encroaches on my land. I have not done anything about it because I know to do so would mean they would either lose extremely valuable parking, or they'd have to knock down the porch in front of their house. I am still concerned that they're not included in this, because clearly that is an illegal parking space that I can return to my property anytime I wish to.
I believe I did say that, I wasn't sure.
No, I know you said you weren't sure, so I'm just clarifying that it is in fact, and I think Marie Karpelka wisely noted it as well, it is in fact encroaching on our property.
I guess if you
And if I
made it-
move the property line where it belongs, they would not fit a car.
If you or someone made an official request, which I don't consider this board has been requested to do so, to go down to Swan Place and rule on everybody whether they had a legal or illegal parking spot, I'm not hearing that, so I'm not going to act on that.
Okay.
So I'm just saying, think about your words, and in this day and age, it could lead to, you know.
Mr. Balin, do you have an agreement with your neighbor to allow them to use that property of yours?
I don't have any formal agreement, no.
Okay, so when you moved in, was that on your property? Or vice versa?
I don't think the property line was clear when I moved in until I figured out where it was. I'm not really here to make that a big issue. I just wanted to clarify a point that
Right.
Officer
But I wanna
Tote
make
said, that he wasn't sure about that.
I want to make this point. You're saying to us, you may go back on that agreement with them, but don't want us to change one that's 55 years old. You see the logic of that?
I haven't changed anything with regard to that property.
I understand. You just said you
may.
might, right? Is that your purpose of bringing it up?
My purpose in bringing it up was to clarify that I don't believe currently, because you're talking about which streets are eligible for daytime parking, and I want to just make it clear that I believe that may be another address, that, and I'm not here to advocate for them. I don't even know if they're here.
Yeah, I think maybe you should say germane to your point,
Right.
to your situation.
Well, happily,
And I think you said
Let me say this, Mr. Balin, if you take their driveway away, they may come to us then, and if they don't have a driveway, we'll talk about the permit
Okay, fair enough.
opportunity for them.
That's fair enough,
okay?
that's fine. I guess that's all I have to say for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just a point of